Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Tonight's video is going to be an interesting one because it is related to a question that I get sent a lot in the comment section, but also via emails when people say, is a song that has been remastered going to have pitch correction or auto-tune applied to it? And I always answer that no, or at least it shouldn't. Anything that is a remaster is not something that's gone back to the remixing process. So remixing and remastering are different processes. Mixing is done in the studio when the band or the artist are recording and the producer is mixing the instruments together, i.e. making particular instruments louder than other ones depending on how they want it to sound, and they might apply reverb, delay to vocals or guitars, or chorus to a particular vocal line, for example, or they might pitch correct vocals or auto-tune vocals. That all happens in the mixing stage. So when the song is then released, actually, once the mix is done and it leaves the studio, then it gets mastered. And mastering, I've always referred to it as a separate art form, because mastering a song means that the person doing it is listening to the overall song. They're not going in and changing the volume of the hi-hat, for example. They don't have that capability. That's all done in the mixing stage. So now, mastering a track means editing the EQ curve of the finished mix, the finished song. And when I say editing the EQ curve, it's like adjusting the high end to get more brightness or the low end to get more bass. Somebody mastering a track, if they wanted to increase the volume of the hi-hat, for example, they can't do that. They've got the whole track they've got to work with. So they've got to find where the hi-hat is frequency-wise and then boost that frequency. So this will be in their EQ curve or what they're looking at on screen. They might be able to see the peaks of the hi-hat and they can choose to boost that frequency, but they're not turning up the volume of the hi-hat. They are boosting a frequency within that whole track. So say, for example, the hi-hat's now been boosted, or at least the frequency where the hi-hat lives has been boosted. Guess what? If the drummer hits a crash in the same frequency, that's going to boost that as well. So it means now your crashes will be potentially boosted because it's boosting the frequency, not the instrument. So this is why I say it's an art form, is because it's totally different to mixing. So with all of that said, I've always said on my channel, if I see something that's labeled as remastered, but the vocal has been pitch corrected or auto-tuned, I will point that out. And this is the first video I've done of this type, and it just happens to be the Beatles and the Long and Winding Road. Obviously, this has been brought to my attention by people who are listening to it and think that the vocal sounds a little bit calibrated. What we've got is, on the left-hand side, the original. So it means that we've got the Phil Spector production, everything that was potentially or subjectively over the top. It's all opinion based. But on the right hand side, we then have the Let It Be Naked album, and the Long and Winding Road was a track on that where it's now all been stripped back. And they used Paul's final take of the vocal, which they didn't in that original release. And I believe this was maybe in the early 2000s, 2003, potentially, that this was released to begin with. And then it's been remastered. And the remaster is more recent, maybe 2013. So we will listen to both of these isolated vocals playing back at the same time, so you'll be able to hear the difference in the takes. Let's have a listen.
Long and winding road that leads.
And by the way, links to these two videos are in the description below if you want to listen to them without me interrupting it and without hearing the isolated vocals. So you can hear straight away that it is indeed a different vocal, so we don't need to spend any time on that. Have a listen.
To your door.
You can hear the timing, and we've got vibrato over here all the way through, and on the Let It Be Naked version, we've just got a straight line, calibrated to A440 standard pitch equal temperament. So what has gone on here is, on the right hand side, this is where, again, I don't understand this, but everyone can have their own view. I don't understand why you would release another version of a song because you maybe thought the original, the production was too over the top and you wanted to strip it back. Why you would then apply pitch correction to your voice? If you want to strip it back, surely you want it to be as raw as possible. So we've stripped back everything apart from really the voice, because that's been heavily edited. So this was, for reference, heavily edited in 2003. It might be why it sounds a little bit weird, because digital pitch correction back then was a bit more laborious and started to sound potentially a bit more like auto-tune rather than a subtle pitch correction. So, I mean, you'll be able to see from less... I mean, this is still the same voice. So when we've got from left to right, so Paul McCartney's voice, hopefully you'll be able to see the difference between lines being squashed and pitch corrected and then not. So over here on the left hand side, this is the original release, Phil Spector's production, but we're listening to the isolated vocal. Look at Paul's vocal here, quite a wide vibrato. And then look here, considering that this is still going to be in amongst those other takes that he was doing, but this is the last take. So his voice isn't magically going to change just doing another take of a song. The only magic change we have here is pitch correction. So you'll be able to see how we've got very much more, even though we're not perfectly over the lines, we've got a very much more shallow signal and note. So it looks more like a straight line than on the left-hand side where we've got this vibrato. So here, I mean, pretty much over the line there in a straight line. And here we have a tiny descension down to the C4. And as we start to move across, here, pretty straight, a little bit flat, pretty straight on the line, straight on the line. We come down on the line, and here, a lot more freedom, because it's not calibrated. So anyway, you'll start to notice this kind of thing the whole way through, that where we do have any straight lines here, they aren't calibrated to A440, but they will be on the right hand side. So why this has got people confused is because on the right hand side, this is the Let It Be Naked version, which was pitch corrected in 2003, now remastered, released in 2013, and it still is pitch corrected. So the people that are listening to the remaster don't realise that the first version of it was pitch corrected. Again, I know people say, well, why are you pitch correcting it? I don't have an answer for that. But here, another great example, squashed, stuck to the line, and here, straight over the line, and here, a little bit sharp. But you'll start to see this the whole way through. And if you listen to the vocal, I think because we are so calibrated to A440 and so many times, line, 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 considering Paul's natural voice, when we're looking at it on the left and right hand side, I always say it's night and day. When you're looking at something that is calibrated to A440, it's more like looking at a stringed instrument, or even, a piano. But if you strictly tune your guitar, then you should be over these lines, because tuners will be tuning it by default to A440. So here again, look at the nice wave of vibrato here, and kind of squashed, and up here squashed, here squashed to the line, but then we do descend a little bit. But you can see that here we're actually sharp, and Paul had a natural tendency just to descend, so they just kind of limited that. But anyway, looking through, again, you'll see this kind of thing all over the place. Line, 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 line. Compared to, pretty much, but then we have the reset, line, pretty much. We descend a little bit and then the reset. I always say the reset because great singers with great pitch can hit a line maybe once, twice, 3 times in a row. You'll always get a reset where the pitch isn't calibrated, so it will go wherever it goes rather than being stuck on the line so many times in a row. And I mean, good example here that we have the pitch accuracy, here I'd say pretty much over the line and then held over the line, but we had this little reset beforehand. The reset doesn't exist with pitch correction. And if I just move this forward as well, again, here, I mean, we've got a massive reset here, just slightly sharp, drifting down. And this was the original release. So it wasn't something that Phil Spector said, oh, that vocal's not good enough, so you're going to have to re-record it. This was released. So it was easily accurate enough, but obviously not deemed accurate enough for the stripped back version and to take another vocal and then pitch correct it. And then you could make the argument, well, if the final take needed pitch correction, for the stripped back version, why didn't you just use the natural vocal that was already on it and just do away with all of those extra production elements that you don't want in there? So they've chosen to replace the vocal with something that's potentially less accurate and needs pitch correcting. I think what actually happened was this vocal was absolutely fine, but they've decided to pitch correct it anyway and release it as something that really it isn't. When you're talking about, this album, Let It Be, Naked, you would assume just saying that it means nothing is done to this. It is what it is. This is about as raw as you're going to ever hear from the Beatles. But that's not true. If anything, you could actually say this is more produced from a vocal standpoint than this one. So you can start to see the contradiction that we've got here. This is released because the production was too much in the first release, in the original, but it's been reversed by the production team. Whoever's done this have overproduced the vocal, conformed it to A440, and it wouldn't have been here. Absolutely, when Paul McCartney recorded this vocal in the studio at the same time as this one, this wasn't a possibility. Digital pitch correction.
Why leave me standing here?
Yeah, and you can hear the processing. It's always the processing that gives it away to the ear when you're looking at it. Obviously, this is the reason I show the pitch monitoring software on screen, so that you can see why it sounds processed, because it's being stuck to lines.
Let me know the way.
And there. I mean, it is crazy. I don't know why people are doing this, or why they did it, and why they're continuing to do it, turning the human voice, especially such distinct voices, turning them into a software instrument that you'd be playing on a keyboard, just holding down the D-sharp 4.
Many times I've been alone, and many times I've cried. Anyway, you've always known.
I mean, we're just not given any other option than being on A440.
The many ways I've tried.
I didn't spot this the first time round, but you can actually see here, and you can hear it, that there are notes here. The B3 is getting snapped to, and almost the C4 is getting snapped to in a split second. Listen again.
Tried.
We have that, but Paul McCartney doesn't sing it like that, and this is too fast to have that as, tried, and you wouldn't choose those notes anyway. Melodically, it's not going to work with the song and the melody of the song. So anyway, it means that they were using auto-tune. What gets me is, first of all, why they've even done it in the first place, but then that nobody's checked it. That they haven't singled the vocal track and just listened to it through just to make sure that the auto-tune isn't snapping it to wrong notes. But they've just let this go. It's obviously fallen through the net, and they've said, yeah, that's fine, release this as the final album vocal. It is unbelievable.
They lead me back.
Yeah, I mean, when you know Sir Paul McCartney's voice very well, as I do, it just immediately sounds a bit silly. You know, you think, well, I can't really listen to this because I'm listening to a keyboard. I'd much rather hear, you know, the original vocal. Let's have a listen to the original.
To the long winding road.
Now, try and listen for that processed sound, because it should be there if this is pitch corrected, which it isn't, but that's why it's not there. But people will say about isolating vocals and you know, artifacts that remain on the voice. Throughout all of my analysis videos, when we listen to a genuine vocal that has not been processed from a pitch perspective, it never sounds processed. Listen.
You left me standing here.
It just sounds like the human voice, because nothing's having to work. There's no processor moving these notes around. Back to the emails about this. So yes, this is labelled as remastered, and it has been heavily pitch corrected, but the original release in 2003 was heavily pitch corrected. So I think that's where people maybe are getting confused, thinking that the remaster is the thing that's had the pitch correction applied to it, but it isn't. But I did say in the past, if I see anything with remastered on it and it's pitch corrected, then I will bring it to your attention. Thank you guys for requesting a look at this particular case for tonight. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Keep those suggestions and requests coming for future videos in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!